Washington investigative journalist with McClatchy Newspapers. As we turn now to this new film, we're joined here in New York by investigative journalist, filmmaker, and author Danny Schechter, the news dissector. His latest film features interviews with industry insiders to reveal how the financial crisis was built on a foundation of criminal activity. It's called Plunder, the crime of our time. The film follows up on his book, Plunder, that predicted the coming crisis, and an earlier film, In Debt We Trust, that explored America's rising credit burden at the time. This is a clip from Plunder.
To help with our investigation, we spoke with convicted white-collar criminal Sam Antar.
The white-collar criminal has no legal constraints. You subpoena documents, we destroy documents. You subpoena witnesses, we lie. So you are at a disadvantage when it comes to the white-collar criminal. In effect, we're economic predators.
To an investigative reporter on the business beat, Wall Street steals far more than the mafia, says Gary Weiss.
Wall Street takes much larger sums of money than were involved in the mafia scams. The regulatory system is such that they can get away with it.
The lack of media scrutiny, the absence of regulation, the widespread illusion that markets and real estate could only go up created a casino mentality, an environment for successful fraudsters and white-collar criminals. Mo Sasserby was a VP at Standard & Poor's.
There certainly is criminality. We know about it. We know all the people who, in fact, did something rather simple, which is put their hand in someone else's pocket and took money that belonged to them.
This crime has been 10, 15 years in the making. We're only finding out about this crime because of one specific reason: the tanking economy. Imagine if the economy didn't tank. Imagine if this was allowed to go on for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Imagine how big it would have gotten then.
An excerpt from Danny Schechter's new film, Plunder, the crime of our time. Danny Schechter, welcome to Democracy Now! You have been predicting this for a while.
Well, you know, if you want to know about Wall Street crime, let's ask some criminals. And that's what I try to do. I've been arguing for a jail out, not just a bailout, for quite some time. And I'm also arguing with the progressive movement to stop turning this whole discussion into a Harvard economics seminar on financial instruments like derivatives, et cetera. And let's get down to the people who have been hurt. Who's benefited by this? The crimes, not just against investors, which is how they define it, but against homeowners and workers throughout this country who have been, their whole lives have been, you know, if not destroyed, certainly set back by this financial crisis that came like a tsunami and swept their neighborhoods away and swept them away. So that's why I'm focusing on crime and what I call the crime narrative. There's a right and wrong in this, not just a left and right. And we have to focus on that, it seems to me, if we're going to mobilize people. I've written a book called The Crime of Our Time, as well as this film, to make the case a little bit stronger. And I think that we have to start thinking in these terms. That's why you see the protesters wearing prison uniforms in the hearing yesterday, because they understand that. And that's what the public understands. We've got to talk to the people, not to the PhDs.
And much of what's happening now in Congress is actually both parties trying to angle for the mantle of going after Wall Street, when they've actually been sitting around now for a year and a half and not doing anything about the origins of the crisis.
Well, there's a saying in this world that called capture. You know, that the Congress and the politicians have been captured by the industry. It could be said of the White House as well, because the financial reform really doesn't go very far. So, you know, we have a situation where we can't trust the Congress. We've got to trust ourselves. We've got to get in the streets. We've got to do things to press this issue. The AFL-CIO is marching on Wall Street on Thursday. There was a big rally at the Wells Fargo shareholders meeting in San Francisco yesterday. People are moving on this issue. Groups like A New Way Forward and Public Citizen, Citizens for Financial Reform. That's what we have to do. We have to organize. And the problem is we're so taken with all these, you know, esoteric words, you know, that we're not kind of keeping our eyes on the fundamentals here. That's what Plunder, the crime of our time, is trying to do. We're trying to organize screenings across the country. We had one last night in New York. It was packed. We want to do some more. We love your viewers, listeners, to get involved and show the film and try to get this out. We have a Facebook page, Plunder Film. We're trying to get the word out.
Let's go to another excerpt of Plunder. This begins with Bruce Marks from the Neighborhood Assistance Corporation of America, NACA.
If you say that people made bad decisions, right? Well, Maybe you can argue that 5,000 people made bad decisions, or 10,000, or 100,000. But when it gets to 1 million people making bad decisions, and then 5 million people making bad decisions, and 10 million people making bad decisions, because now we're over 10 million people at risk of foreclosure, at some point it turns from making a bad decision because there is a scheme out there. There's a home ownership deception scheme out there.
Enter the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The FBI describes its responsibility for investigating financial and mortgage fraud on its website. It is called Mortgage Fraud an Epidemic.
They're calling it Operation Malicious Mortgage. The FBI unveiled the results of a 3.5-month probe into mortgage-related fraud. FBI Director Robert Mueller.
Through this operation, more than 400 defendants have been charged, and we have obtained 173 convictions in crimes that accounted for more than $1 billion in estimated losses.
The FBI first warned of this fraud epidemic in 2004, reporting also, though, that their corporate crime units had been downsized to join the fight against terrorism. Some criminal cases are reported in the press, but not all are prosecuted, with companies often paying fines rather than facing a judge or a jury. Goldman Sachs paid $60 million to settle a subprime complaint. The Massachusetts authorities said they had designed mortgages to fail, and they paid $60 million, but they did not admit any guilt.
That's standard. It's standard when Wall Street firms negotiate what are in effect plea bargains with regulators, for them not to admit guilt.
There'll be another envelope, same amount, tomorrow night.
Old movies help shape our images of gangsters, like this loan shark. But today, fraud has gone legit and become pervasive, even accepted in the financial world. According to an investigation by the Center for Public Integrity, 25 of the sleaziest subprime lenders were backed by the biggest banks in the United States: Citigroup, Wells Fargo, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Bank of America. Together, the Financial Times reported they originated $100 billion in subprime mortgages between 2005 and 2007, almost 3/4 of the total.
What I did in the mortgage industry, I first got involved in about 1998. I was a loan originator. And during that time, what I had seen was nothing short of amazing in terms of, it was very predatory. The techniques that were being used, the salesmanship that was being used, the gimmicks on the loans and how they were structured, it really disturbed me. It was the standard. A question of pervasiveness is one thing, but it was the standard. This is the way the business was run. The idea was to make as much money as possible, not just on the loan, but on the different fees that were added into the loan, and even things that they referred to as back-end bumps on the interest rates, where the borrower had no idea that the actual loan that he was getting is not what he was necessarily qualified for.
An excerpt of the new film Plunder, The Crime of Our Time. Danny Schechter, last comments. Do you think the guys should be going off to jail that we saw yesterday?
I'm not alone. Marcy Kaptur has 140,000 signatures on a petition to try to get the Justice Department to file criminal, not civil charges. You know, we're in a situation now that's getting really serious because the same rating agencies that were part of validating and legitimating, you know, this fraud, you know, just brought down the government of Greece yesterday. I mean, they've invalidated all of their debt. They've called it all junk. There's likely to be a kind of a domino theory, a domino effect all over Europe, affecting Ireland, Spain.
In Europe,
yeah, and you know, so this situation is periling, putting the whole economic recovery at peril. These companies are running amok, and not much is being done to stop them. And that's why we have to get engaged with this issue. That's why I made the film, and I'm so glad that you were able to have me on to talk about it. People want to write to me, dissector@mediachannel.org, and I'll tell them more.
And do you think this fuels the Tea Party movement? People deeply concerned that they have no money, they have lost their jobs, and their money is going to continue to pay bonuses for the guys we see yesterday in the Senate.
Of course it is. But the Tea Party is not having polite, seminars about economic, financial mechanisms. They're out in the streets organizing, and where's the response? Come on, people. We've got to get out there, too, and raise the flag of economic justice, because that's the flag that's not being raised by the Tea Party.
Danny Schechter, investigative journalist. His film is Plunder, the Crime of Our Time. He blogs at newsdissector.com. This is Democracy Now! Back in a minute.